Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Clinical and Translational Science Collaborative of Northern Ohio at Case Western Reserve University for our first READI program of the year. We are talking about community engagement in the best way, or one of the best ways, I should say, because we're all a family and we all approach this work in a very inclusive manner, of course. Today, we are very fortunate to have the one, the only Jackie Dolata. She is the Assistant Director of the Population Health and Equity Research Institute at MetroHealth. She will be walking us through the BRACE Toolkit, and BRACE is an acronym for Building Research for Academic and Community Equity. Jackie, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Jalise. I love that. I'm going to share my screen, everyone, and we'll kind of be bouncing in and out of PowerPoint slides and the website as well. But again, Jackie Dolata, I'm with the Population Health and Equity Research Institute, and also the Center for Health Equity Engagement, Education, and Research, CHEER, which was formerly the Center for Reducing Health Disparities. I'd like to introduce Carrie Gibbons. I felt a little remiss to present this work, this toolkit, without at least one of our community partners who really informed all of this work. And so I think a few folks might be popping on later, but Carrie said she would chime in, because this really was not done without the input of community. Quick overview. I'm going to give you a little background about the center, why, some of the mission and why we started doing this work. Definitely the Community Research Scholars Initiative, where this BRACE Toolkit was born from, and some of the issues that our scholars, reported to us, and why we felt the need to develop this. We'll talk about the methods for development, launching it, definitely the evolution of BRACE. It has not been a stagnant tool, and then sort of our evaluation and where we've come so far. And I would like if everybody could, I know it's lunchtime, so cameras are off and whatnot, and that's totally great, but if you don't mind putting into the chat just who you are, where you're from, what institution or organization, and that way I think it always gives us a better idea of just exactly who is in the audience. So that's always helpful, I think, to Carrie and myself. So thank you, everyone.
And Jackie, just so you know, your sharing screen is showing like your computer background, and then the slides are kind of smaller. So I don't know if there's a way to like maximize the slides.
Good heads up, Sherry. How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Thank you. And let's see. Okay. All right. So I know a lot of times we save our thank yous to the end, but I wanted to put this out here first, especially before anybody drops off of this lunchtime presentation. So I want to say first and foremost, thank you to the members of the Community Research Scholars Initiative program. And all of the respective organizations, these community-based organizations went on a limb, and you'll hear a little bit about this program, but really had an interest in putting their staff members forward and learning about research, and it's been a cool journey along the way. So thank you to all of the organizations and our scholars. To Dr. Sagal, he was the PI for both the P60 and U54 NIH grants from which this work came about. My co-director of the program, Earl Pike, so he was my partner in crime for a long time. Celeste Collins is our independent evaluator out of Cleveland State, and she did a lot of the evaluation work and has helped us along the way in terms of writing up these manuscripts and whatnot. Josh Waters is a local web designer, and he has just been amazing. We've worked with him over the last decade, and I would highly recommend him as just a small minority-owned business, and he just gets it and he gets the work, and we're always just so happy to continue to doing business with him. And then Josh Beltran, who's on here, Josh has really maintained the website, added to it, kept it moving. And I think anybody who's worked in like the realm of web design or social media, you just know how important it really is to keep things fresh. So thank you to Josh. And Elodie is our other research coordinator, who's just done great work in helping us contribute to content and papers along the way. Okay, so a little bit of background. The Community Research Scholars Initiative ran from 2012 to 2017. This was part of a National Institutes of Health grant, P60. And what it was is this 2-year training program for nonprofit professionals to engage in research. And we had a total of 9 scholars over this time. And what we did, the grant paid 40% of their salary. So essentially 2 days a week they spent at MetroHealth with us to really get an immersive research educational experience. There's a lot of, research workshops for community. At the same time, there was another similar program out of Case Western that I think was like a day a month. And we thought we're really going to take a deep dive and hopefully invest in these folks, to really see if we can have them become more like community research ambassadors, right? So, and Carrie, I don't know, anything you want to add to the Community Research Scholars Initiative program? I was excited to find our old logo. That was a cool logo.
So it was really I had at that point in my career been in nonprofit. I worked at the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. And I was looking to find a way for my skill set to be magnified. And, at the time, so this was our cohort was 2015 to 2017. And so there was a fair amount of research being done, but being specific to the LGBT center wasn't necessarily happening. And then the beautiful part about this, so I'm a high school graduate, and going through this program really put me in rooms and spaces that normally I wouldn't have access to, but it gave me the understanding of how to navigate those spaces, and also ask the questions from a perspective of lived experience as opposed to the perspective of what I read in the book, right? We were reading the books and we were, it was coming at us really fast, right? Like we had a lot of homework, a lot of readings, and it was just a really beautiful opportunity for folks who were in the nonprofit sector to be able to participate in different spaces. So it was truly a life-changing moment. So Chrissy for life. Yeah.
Chrissy for life, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a little background, and I think it's important for everybody to know that this program, this is happening with Chrissy in the background. And we launched this program because we were especially Dr. Sagal, Dr. Daryl Thornton, we were doing some community engaged work, but we felt like a lot of times we weren't quite getting to community-based participatory research. And a lot of times things are community engaged, so we've asked a community person for a letter of support, but how do we get to CBPR, where the community is lending input into all phases of the study, from the study design until dissemination? And, these are kind of the principles of CBPR, and most of us who are in this field know this, but, just increasing trust and, helping with recruitment and retention, all these things that we're trying to do all the time, involving community can really help these things. But what we found as we started the Community Research Scholars Initiative was some anecdotal experiences were being shared from our scholars. And they were sharing some genuine concerns that they had about partnering in research. And so I think, especially for me, you read about these things when we do our credits and different ways that researchers have broken trust, and they seem like far away, and they seem, well, maybe this happened, years and years ago, but this was, real time, like real experiences that were happening. And it was kind of like, well, wait a second, hold on. How are we going to build all this capacity in these research scholars? And then hopefully they want to partner in research. And then knowing that maybe the landscape isn't quite there for them to do this effectively. So Carrie, I don't know if you want to chime in about, some of these things that, we learned and we shared. But this really led to, these two co-learning sessions. I don't know that we called them co-learning back then, but they're co-learning now. So Carrie, anything you want to chime in about just kind of your experiences as a community person, when folks would come and talk to you about research?
Yeah, so as a community member, like during Chrissy and then moving out of Chrissy, the umbrella had changed. Like when we were in Chrissy, the opportunity to engage with PIs as well as institutions where we could get more feedback and understand better the landscape of what was happening in research at the academic level, and also understanding the needs of the community. Like I can reflect back to the project in which I created, which was two separate focus groups of trans women of color and white trans women and their experiences in healthcare. And I remember that when I started, I was very much interested in youth homelessness. And so knowing that the need was actually in finding out more around transness and healthcare, as opposed to a lot of studies that were already being done at a national level around youth homelessness, right? And so being in the space where the umbrella of Chrissy was now gone, and then we're being asked as an organization to do the research, it ended up being a bit more challenging because as the community partner, we were getting asked in a lot of different ways and the capacity had lessened. But in that, we still had the avenue because of being a part of the CBRN, which is the Community-Based Research Network, and being able to have the access to the contacts that we made through the program, which was also very helpful. And so and there was also a lot of hesitation amongst upper level staff management. And during my time, I had left the LGBT Center and I went to May Dugan, and it was a lot harder to explain to a new organization that didn't go through the Chrissy program how important it was for research to be a part of what we were doing. Not that they were resistant, it was just more a matter of the building blocks weren't established, and therefore they didn't see how accessible it really was, right? And I think that can be a barrier on the community level because they think it's so far removed from where they are, but in reality it's not. And like that's where like the Brace Toolkit and the CBRN come into play, because it allows for us to have this connection that we wouldn't normally. Even the CTSC, I don't want to exclude you, Giselle, but those building blocks can be in play regardless. And then when I came over to NEOC several years ago, we hit the ground running. They're like, whatever you need, like we're here for it. However you need to participate, we're very much invested in being able to build the capacity. And yeah, kind of nailed it.
Scary.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
That's great. I love that perspective. So, really we were sitting there, and like Carrie said, there's hesitancy, from upper level folks. I think a lot of times, just small CBOs are strapped for time, right? How do we fit research into our agenda? We're trying to serve clients. And on the flip side, we were getting requests from different faculty at Case and Metro. They wanted to, when we were running our consult service, hey, we want to work with this community partner. Can you introduce us to them? We want access to their clients. We want access to their patient population. This is a hard to reach group. And so we were realizing there were kind of these issues on both sides. And so part of it was realizing, community felt a little bit unsure and unsteady about coming, to the table with physicians and, the folks who felt like they had all the money. There were definite feelings of they don't understand what I have to do, right? From invoicing to making sure, we joke, in academia, it's a miracle if we get a subcontract, paid on within 6 months time. That's not a luxury that, right, a lot of these community-based organizations had. Getting paid, meant keeping the doors open. So there was just a lot of understanding that we realized there's a huge divide here. And how do we create some tangible tools? So we really had these brainstorming sessions, these co-learning sessions, and wrote all of our different experiences and things up on these big Post-it notes. And what we came up with was, some actual experiences of feeling, community partners were saying, we've been in rooms where we've been talked down to by PIs. They don't value our expertise. They don't value the fact that we know these clients inside and out. We know this community. There were times where folks were asked for access to data. Just, can I have your data set? No plans for a partnership. No, how can you be involved in this publication? Just, can you share this data? You're not doing anything with it. I could do something with it. Like I mentioned, can you just be a gatekeeper to this hard to reach population, right? Like, we're having trouble getting to this population. Can you just give us an in here without any sort of, again, partnership, trust building? There was a real lack of input on the analysis of results. I think from the faculty side of things, folks felt like, well, we finally collected all the data. We just need to get this paper out and, publish. And, the community partners, mentioned, and scholar agencies, we were just never even asked to review a manuscript before it went in. We were never asked to give our 2 cents on, how this was being interpreted. And at times, just never hearing from the PI again, right? I did this study with you, and I'm sure it probably got published somewhere, but we legit never heard. And I mean, this is still happening. This is not Brace has not eradicated this, and this has not gone away, but these were some of the really real things that we were trying to combat. And then, maybe, okay, somebody, a faculty person would, hey, we're going to include you on this publication, and we're actually going to share this journal with you, but you didn't really have a lot of input into it. And also, there's no type of thought or dissemination for what you could share back with your clients, right? This journal article this is not going to relate to the folks that actually participated. So not thinking about any kind of community friendly, dissemination. And then I think there were a lot of things from academia, but, this just trying to understand what community priorities, community organization priorities were. And then saying that, there were some challenges. It was hard when it didn't feel like, even if there was a foundation of knowledge, mentioning IRBs, it'd be helpful if when you went to engage with a community partner, they had some of this. So we took all of that information and we said, okay, so how can we enhance bipartisan commitment and combined effectiveness of community academic research partnerships? And we were like, we've got it. We need to build research for academic and community equity. We've got a name. Now, what does it look like? So we came up with Brace. The goal is to maximize community engagement in research. We wanted to accelerate the translation of research to community practice. Ensuring equitable partnership probably should be moved up to number 1. I think regardless of something gets translated or not into practice, feeling, promoting these long-term engagements and these long-term partnerships was really what Brace set out to do. And so the result was this toolkit that lives on our center website. And we created all of the components by and with our community partners. So there's nothing that myself or Earl or Dr. Sagal or Dr. Thornton just, said, hey, we need, we're just going to throw this in here, right? The whole framework of this was built from these listening sessions, these co-learning sessions, and, developed with our community partners. And so I think when you think about toolkits that are out there, the NIH, PCOR, there's a wealth of resources out there, right? But I think what's unique about Brace is it was developed for and by Clevelanders. And I think that's kind of cool, and community Clevelanders too. With this landscape, you know, Metro, UH, Cleveland Clinic, the VA, Case Western, all in the background. And some folks, you know, said, oh, you know, do you want to, like, you know, patent this, or and it was like, no, this is going to be free access. You can register. We have folks register, because that way we can kind of get a sense of who's doing it. But there was never a question as to whether or not, you know, this would be out there and this would be, you know, disseminated broadly. You know, so we started with some how and why to use the toolkit, and we talked about this, but we wanted to create a starting place. Sometimes you know, our community partners are saying, we don't even know what questions to ask, right? Like we're just, there's a lack of, you know, we want to make sure we're not coming into this blind. We don't want to feel naive. And so really the first step of BRACE, you know, shows you that, you know, setting up a meeting to discuss the partnership. We have a partnership template that is like the step one of BRACE. And, you know, then the various sections are to be used as needed, hopefully resulting in an MOU. You know, we created a list of BRACE values. You know, the goal is transparency, fairness, and equity, getting research, you know, translated to the community. And really this respect for knowledge, I think, we still see this today. I think we still struggle with this today, is that, if a PI or a doc comes, and it's not just, well, this community person should be happy that we are asking them to do research with us. It's like, no, they have something to bring to the table, and they don't, you know, actually have to do the research with you. You know, it needs to be mutually beneficial. So I think just thinking about, you know, all of these things were really in the background, and what we tried to do with BRACE. So I want to pause here, and you can scan this QR code, or you can go to our BRACE site. But I'm also going to stop sharing and then pull up this new share so that you can see what we created. So this took some time, and as I mentioned, we started this probably 2015 into 2016. So it was at the change of both cohorts. But, you know, we did a soft launch of these initial content. And so really, you know, you can see that the idea behind BRACE was to not have it look too heavily academic. We wanted to make it community friendly. We wanted to, you know, keep things kind of short and sweet. So you'll see that there's kind of a look and short introductions, but we've got our research proposal review form. So every page is going to tell you exactly what the point is. And, you know, this is, you know, kind of really a play-by-play. Who's proposing the research? You fill out part A. Part B is who's asking to partner. You can download, all of the forms are downloadable. And so really, you know, just trying to walk people through a step-by-step guide. If I pull up the form, you know, it can be completed. Oh, let's see. I'd have to download it. Sorry. So, you know, project title, who's the lead, funding sources, your timeline, any attachments. You know, a big question that comes up often is, you know, are you looking just to have a partner on paper, or you need some staff time involved? That's a big one, you know, in terms of overhead. So we ask a lot of these different questions, and I'm not going to go through them all. But, you know, this really just helps guide this conversation to start. Talking about data sharing agreements, talking about what the budget looks like, incentives for participants, where records are stored, who else is collaborating, questions about the IRB. And then, you know, for the community person, you know, does this sound interesting? Does it fit with your mission and your goals? You know, do you feel comfortable with the budget and the demands for the staff time? So all of these types of questions, again, fully developed, you know, from and by, you know, community. And so we thought that this, was a really good place to start in terms of just having that first conversation. We talk about partnership, throughout. So this is just kind of like an introduction to what community organizations are, what academic partners are. We had some ideas, that we really need to have kind of just timeframes. I think from the academic side, especially, it was important to relay to the community partners, hey, like sometimes it's going to take us 4 months to get this IRB up and running, right? And what does that look like? So really talking about pre-project, startup project, what's going to happen. So I think, everybody has a million ways of doing these things. And what we just wanted to do was, here's a sample, here's a starting block for folks. We wanted to create a glossary of terms. So, speaking the language, this was all from our Chrissy scholars. They wanted to, these are all the things that come up. So again, a budgeting guide. I actually did a whole presentation on this, right, last quarter, Jaleese, but I think just thinking about community considerations, what needs to be thought about. I get these questions still to this day. Sometimes I just want to tell some of our faculty, like, go to Brace and look it up. But, these are the things that you need to be considering if you're going to be budgeting in a community partner. So, things like stipends, a facilitator, who's going to, just transcription fees, all of these different things. So, and again, IRB basics, we felt like our Christie scholars were starting to feel comfortable with the IRB, but we also felt like their peers, if they went and name dropped IRB, would be like, what is this? So what's the purpose of the IRB? Different reviews, these types of things. And again, like meant to be community friendly, but I also think the content is there for, we've really worked with our early stage investigators and kind of, utilizing the same information to explain things. We do have an MOU template in here. So again, every institution is going to have probably their own MOUs, but we felt like it would be helpful to at least have that sample. And I talk about that a little bit in the slides. And then we've got some reference materials. So just different, all the books about CBPR. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions or any thoughts or just anything? I don't know, Carrie, I know Yvonne's on as well. Anything you wanted to mention about, the sort of development of this and, Toolkit launch?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things where I see that there are a lot of researchers and medical folks and folks from CASE who are on this call right now, and I think that's really amazing. I remember the interesting part is when, again, after folks started coming to us coming to the LGBT Center to do research projects after I had graduated from Chrissy, I remember having this like really big struggle because like I get paid a salary, but then like this investigator is coming in wanting to do this project, wanting me to be a part of the project, and also wanting, let's hypothetically say, pay me $50 an hour, right? But really they're utilizing my time as an LGBT Center employee. And so as an employee who's like, oh, I can make $50 an hour as opposed to $15 an hour, wow, like, let's go. But then the reality of what actually that money is going to is very different for that $50 an hour, right? And so I think that it's really important not only to have those really candid conversations, but as a community member who really does want to be paid their value, because oftentimes in nonprofits, we're not paid our value. It's really important to try and have those difficult conversations, especially around finances. And I think that, there's a way, like you might look at the Brace Toolkit and be like, oh, I already know all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that 100%. But the community partner or even community person that you're working with doesn't. Even the MOU, like I have a colleague at NEOC right now who didn't even know what an MOU was. No shade to them, right? But the reality is, like, we talk in acronyms, and a lot of the times people don't know what those are. And so simplifying it, right? And the other part is dissemination. If you're doing a project that triggers trauma in people and you're like expecting them to do a 3-hour one-on-one interview, and then you ghost them with no information of what came of their like pouring their soul out to you, like that is doing harm, right? And the goal of a project is not to do harm. It is to help those who helped you get that information, right? Or if you're getting a data set and all of a sudden you're going to sit on it and not like bring it back in some sort of disseminating way, again, like that's creating this like fringe of, or a break in this relationship, because if they've been open and because they're naive to like, oh, you're going to do good, right? You're a good person, right? But then sometimes things happen and like you do sit on the data and you can't get it published, or you're not disseminating it. And that's to no fault of your own, but then also coming back to the community or the organization and being like, look, like I can't get anyone to publish this because it's not where the publishers want to be right now, or, you know, what have you. But I really want to hone in on, it is really valuable to take the time to do this from a perspective that you have expertise, but also like this might not be the expertise of who you're asking to partner with.
Thanks, Carrie. I think that's great. You know, I think so often, maybe this is just, you know, people being human beings, or there's some awkwardness about like, well, I'm not sure how to broach this, or I'm not sure how to talk about this. And so that's really what, I mean, Grace was really there, you know, partially to be a guide and helping, you know, create these conversations and create this dialogue. You know, it's not meant to be a one-way street. Arnav, I don't know if you want to chime in. I'm reading your comment in the chat.
Yeah, I'm happy to just say it, ask the question out loud. But like it sounds like the research proposal forums are mainly with community groups like NEOC. I was just wondering if they're like extended to each individual person that's joining all of those co-learning and listening sessions as well. Is it like is it a commitment that you're making to each individual as well, or is it like at a group level that we're making commitment to the organization?
Yeah, I think
Just out of curiosity.
No, that's a great point. You know, so in general, the MOUs are done between the organization. But I think that's a, you know, I think in part of that, developing the partnership tool, we ask about different staff time. So who else is going to be involved in the research, right? Like who else is going to be a part of that? And so while maybe Carrie isn't the executive director of NEOC, so she's not going to sign the MOU, I think you know, having her as part of some of these other tools, you know, in there was intentional. But I think that's a great point. Yeah, the MOU itself is not, you know, some of these forms are not signed by them. But I think the idea is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these conversations. Again, it's not meant to be like, here, let me quickly fill out this form and like get it back to you. It's really meant to be a research, like the start to your research partnership and an actual dialogue. So there should be a meeting and it should involve, you know, all of those involved. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this here. So I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint. So, you know, I think these are some of the real questions that, again, without just showing the forms, that we really wanted to get at. So is there a mutual understanding between the community and academic partner of, you know, the research design before funding is secured, how the research is going to, you know, affect or benefit the participants, the community, expectations, you know, in regards to all of these things that we talked about. So creating that mutual understanding has got to be, you know, all parties of the research team. You know, this idea of a data sharing agreement, we really pushed this. A lot of times folks were like, well, we don't really need a data sharing agreement, you know, or sometimes it was like, well, you know, like we'll share your data. But, you know, it's really meant to protect everyone involved. And so that it's really clear up front, like who owns the data, where does this come from? Who has, there were some issues, even recently, I was talking to one of our CTSC cab folks, and, she mentioned that, somebody was like partnered with us on research. And then when we asked for some of the data to share in like a annual report, they were like, oh no, you can't have that data. And so, and again, this is last month. So it's just, and at the time they didn't have a data sharing agreement, in place. And now she's like, we make sure, we know that we have to have that, unfortunately. And the faculty person's response was like, well, this data hasn't been fully published yet, and I don't, there were some different things, but having that worked out on the front end is really going to, hopefully ease a lot of headaches down the road. This idea of fair allocation of costs across research budgets, this is huge for us. We implemented this in our pilot program. I know Jaleese is doing this actively now with the READI pilots. It's a big deal, and it's been a struggle to try to make sure that this is happening. And some of the pushback from PIs has been like, well, our salaries are just more, so like we should, our salaries are more, so it's more money. It's like, yeah, but we need to be thoughtful about this. We've talked a lot over the years about compensation for participants. We've pushed on IRBs, to say that, listen, this isn't, while we don't want to coerce people, we also need to be respectful of everyone's time and the expertise that they bring. So thinking about that thoughtfully, and, just identifying upfront barriers to participant involvement. More questions, Arnav, to your point, like, are there other partners involved, right? Like, we need to make sure everybody knows who everybody's working with. You can't, have one dialogue with this person and one with that person, like, everybody on the table. IRB approvals and what that looks like, a clear plan of dissemination, agreement about how authorship and research findings are going to be managed. The first author, last author, all of this stuff is important. And should be thought about. And then, sometimes at the end of the day, like, does the community partner have the capacity? Do they want to enter the partnership? And does the academic partner really have the capacity to do it? It's one thing to say you want to do community-based research. It's another thing to carry it out, and sometimes people are like, well, it's hard and it's messy. Yeah, it can be, for sure. But are you committed to it? Because if it's done well, then it's, it leads to some good things. So the goal, creating this sample MOU framework, and you'll see this if you pull it up in there, but these are just, outlining these things in an actual legal document. And then, the hopefully, like we mentioned, you can handle these disagreements or different expectations. You have this written template that you can refer back to at any time during the research project. Who should be involved in these discussions, not only just the CEOs or executive directors, but the staff people, the folks who are going to be working on it, or the staff people on the research side. Hopefully we also felt it was important that the template, be used to say, like, this is not a good research partnership. We should not move this forward. We did step one and we just think we're on different pages, and that's okay too. And then, just kind of identifying upfront, like we mentioned, if there's some sort of legal issue or authorship issue that might, conflict with the template, identifying that early so that you don't have an issue down the road. So I say all that to say that was round one of BRACE. It was really about partnerships and creating that level playing field. And then, and it was going great. And we launched in 2016 and we had a lot of registrants. And then in 2018, CHEER launched a pilot program, Community Engaged Approaches to Reducing Health Disparities. And so we were specifically focused on early stage investigators and giving them $50,000 pilots to do community-based research. But what we found is after the first round, And I think, Carrie, you were a reviewer there, and our faculty reviewer said that these early stage investigators could use some help. They seem, their methods section, just the overall grants, it was really clear that they were brand new to this whole grant writing thing. And the same thing from the community partner side, they were saying that man, these guys could use some help in just thinking about like how to really actively engage community. So we felt like Brace could grow in this realm. We already had the section 1, so how could we add on to this? And so we created a grant proposal section, again, specifically from the feedback that we got. And we really outlined, how to do a specific aims and methods sections. What do we mean when we talk about theoretical frameworks? It's one thing to have a letter of support from community, but having a statement of work, like what is this community partner going to be responsible for? How are they going to be involved throughout? It seems simple, and sure, NIH has lots of resources, but just having a quick, here's the current bio sketch, and this is what you need to have on here, and here's a community bio sketch, and here's some sample bio sketches, some sample budgets and justifications. Again, to talk about all of these things in the abstract and to provide instructions is one thing. I think what's nice about Brace is that there's, for every one of these sections, there's a sample that you can download and look at and see like, oh, okay, this is how I could maybe turn this in. And then dissemination plans. I think Josh especially has done a really nice job. We've got a whole dissemination resource guide, that we turn people to, that lives on Brace as well. So I just think, we can't say enough dissemination. Let's see. So, nothing really happens unless you evaluate it. So evaluation of the toolkit. So this is where Celeste comes in, and also if I'm hoping that many of you register if you have not already registered, but you'll see one of the sections that we have there's 3 sections, right? The partnership, the grant proposal, and then give us your feedback, right? And we always want feedback. Again, we don't want this to be a stagnant thing. We want to know how it's being used. And if you have suggestions, right? Like this is really great, but we could use this section. And that's how we've actually added on a lot of our sections. Sources for this evaluation data was 2016. We actually pilot tested it with a group of folks. We have the ongoing feedback, and then we did a survey in 2023. And overall, we found that there was an increased understanding of research jargon from the community side. There were a lot clearer expectations at the start of a partnership, more meaningful dissemination of results, which is really a huge thing, and then increased use of MOUs and data use agreements at the start of partnerships. So I think all of these were really exciting to see in the evaluation. And let's see, we've got, over 20 sections of content that have been developed. We have over 260, I think probably, this has been a bit, but closer to 300 registrants, which unique registrants. We've got a lot of duplicate registrants, but over closer to 300 registrants. So people around here and across the country are using this. So it's been cool to see, right, Josh? Every now and then we'll see somebody from the NIH pop in and register for Brace, and I was like, yeah, sometimes our resources are more accessible than your resources. And just some quick updates. So we had the privilege of presenting. We were invited to present at the annual meeting in Atlanta, Georgia in November. So you can see Elodie, our research coordinator, Celeste, our evaluator, myself doing our poster presentation. So that was exciting. We were just, so Jaleesa had asked me to give this presentation based on the poster. And in the meantime, just here in January, we were published in Health Promotion Practice. So very excited to actually have Brace be published, because again, if you don't evaluate it and you don't publish it, we need to do these things in academia. But I think, I don't think Brace ends there. Okay, we did it. We're published, okay. The next step really is we want to see more widespread use of this, and we want to continue the dialogue, and we want feedback on additional components, right? Like like this is great, but it would be awesome, or I ran into this issue, or so we're hoping to get more of that feedback. And I I guess can't tell you enough, Jaleesa, I appreciate this opportunity to talk about this work, in the hopes that we do continue to, that it continues to grow and change and evolve, because research is always changing and evolving, and the community landscape is doing the same. So, we're excited to embed Brace a little bit more within the CTSC as well, as a resource to be used, but really, hoping that it makes research accessible for community partners, that it gets rid of some of those early awkward, like, I don't even know what to ask. Like, if you have this guidance and you can set up this meeting, and then these questions don't feel so touchy about money and about authorship and about, like, these are just what, this is part of the template, we should follow this and go through it. And so it gets rid of a lot of that. And finally, just if you haven't already, register for Brace. And if you're not connected with us socially, get social with Cheer. Again, Josh does an awesome job of updating our website. You will always see funding opportunities from the CTSC on there, new things happening with our community partners. We have a podcast, and we're updating Brace. So, I think that's happening. And social media, I'm still not used to the whole X thing. I'm looking for the little bird there, but no more Twitter. So, with that, Carrie, anything else you want to say or add to Brace, participating in the creation of this, or any other thoughts, for researchers and folks on this?
It's worth it. Use it, and yeah, lean into the discomfort. And I think you'll see wonderful success and a lot more equity. I do think. Did Sherry have a question?
Yeah,
Well,
so
it was Carrie's, your comment about the payment piece. It was sort of in the weeds. You don't have to answer it, but yeah, I was curious what you typically do then if you're working with a community organization that wants to do a subcontract and put employees down to do the work as, a subcontract, versus your comment about the $50 an hour and the payment. So I was just curious what you guys have done around that.
So again, coming from a nonprofit, and right now I'm involved with 2 different research projects as a community partner. And nonprofits are always sparse for money, right? And so it just gets wrapped into my salary as is. It's like, oh, okay, well, we piece this together. And so it's a lot more of adding to the employee's plate, as opposed to, like, I notice a lot of times in MetroHealth job descriptions, it's like 20% of your time is spent on the phone, or 8% is spent, talking to Jackie, right? And so that's not at all how it goes here. It's like, you might work 9 to 5, but probably not, right? And I tried when I was at the LGBT center to see if there was like a separate way to like receive funds and still be able to do, like, here's my full-time job and here's an add-on, but they were like, no, we're gonna just put it in your salary, right? There are organizations that can do that. I just haven't had the privilege of working for them. But Jackie, like, being a co-chair, like, we are subcontractors.
So I think Sherry, that's been a struggle, and that was a struggle when we built Chrissy, and we wanted to make sure, right? Like, we don't expect people to do like whatever they were doing before and then 40% extra. Like, you need to have it. That was part of what we put in the MOU, that you need to find, we're compensating you for this, please hire on, or add, make sure that this is getting off of their plate so they're able to do the research effectively. It doesn't always happen. It happens in some agencies, and I think that's something to push for when you're talking to your community partners. Like, we want to make sure that you know, the staff isn't like overwhelmed and has this to research because it's just one more thing that they have to do. So how do we make sure that we're compensating you enough in your overhead that you're able to manage that additional work that needs to be offloaded for that person? Frontline's done a great job of that. They've actually carved out like research positions and some different things for one of our old scholars, Kim Kiley. But you know, I think it really varies organization to organization. And so trying to have those conversations up front. Now, whether or not the executive director or the CEO of an organization, you know, implements that is another thing. But yeah, that's a struggle and something that, you know, we worked through during the Chrissy program as well.
I have another question, but if other people have stuff, I don't want to stop them from saying anything. So maybe I'll wait for a minute and see if other people want to ask them. All right, MOU question. In the toolkit, do you guys list like when you would use an MOU? So this came up for us recently where actually a community partner asked us for an MOU for something that, and then it led to us thinking, well, do all of our community partners on this grant need an MOU? So one of our project leads asked that. And I was like, well, we have scopes of work and letters of support. So like, we didn't feel like we really needed an MOU, but this one community partner was added afterward. And so didn't have that letter of support, which maybe would have been like at that same, you know, level. So, so we just drafted something. I don't think it was like a full MOU because it was like just doing co-design work together. We didn't have like a full plan listed out, but I don't know if you talk about that in the toolkit, like when you would use an MOU versus some other process for engaging with a community partner.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sherry. And I know we had some emails back and forth just about like, well, you could handle it this way or handle it that way. But you know, I don't know that Brace specifically like delves into that. And that might be something that's really helpful to talk about, you know, different levels of participation, you know, where, you know, here you're just getting a stipend, here we're gonna invoice with a sub, and here, you know, we want to do a full MOU based on that. I think that's a really great point. I think the original idea was that every partnership would sort of have a written agreement, whether that was a letter of support or a MOU or a scope of work, so that everybody, you know, those expectations and everything was outlined. But yeah, I think that's a good point because it doesn't. I think MOUs it'd be one thing if you're just doing it between the research partner, but a lot of times you have to involve your legal team, and so that adds an extra layer. And so when do you want to add that extra layer? I think that's a really good good point and would be worthwhile in including in there.
Right.
Any other questions? Comments? Hopefully everyone has taken the opportunity to register.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think this is amazing. Everything about this, the detail, things that we normally think of but don't know how to put in practice or on paper. I feel like you addressed everything. And so I am just really, I don't know, I just feel proud. I'm really happy about this. This is
Thank
really
you,
good.
Afia. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Can I
Yeah,
just
I
ask,
mean,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, please give
No, I was
kick
just
off
gonna
the
say,
thanks.
you know, again, like shout out to this was so developed from the ground up from our community partners. So thank you to all of our community partners for and academic partners who sat in on some of these co-learnings and said, you know, this was tough when I had, you know, this partnership. So thank you to all of them for helping that, and Josh to maintaining it. Thank you, Josh.
All right. Well,
Sorry about that.
Oh, go ahead. Arnav, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you guys have like a framework in one page type of thing. I was just looking at the publication there and I saw that you had like all the things for the toolkit, but just if you have do you have like a one-page summary of the like I guess like a flow chart of the framework or like a one-page thing of the framework?
You know, I don't know that I have a one pager, but that's a great idea, right? Like nobody wants to read my giant publication or anything else. Sometimes the template's overwhelming. So that's a good idea. Josh, I think we could tag team, just getting some sort of infographic that shows, the flow of things
Yeah,
and
some sort of flow
when to
chart.
do what. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Only because I'd love to include this in the grant that we're submitting. I think it's like an essential framework that we can include in. I think there's a lot of components that match, and I just love to put the framework in if there was one.
Yeah, definitely.
Or one pager.
We can work on some stuff. I know I have to work on that. Some things for Vanessa as well. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again to our phenomenal presenters, Jackie, Carrie, and everyone else who was on the call, who was a part of the team that helped develop this invaluable resource. We hope that you will join us February 6th at noon. We'll be hearing about another toolkit that is not made by Clevelanders for Clevelanders. Well, for everyone, of course. Braces for everyone. But it's the AAMC Principles of Trustworthiness Toolkit. Dr. Philip Alberti, the founding director of the AAMC Center for Health Justice, Association of American Medical Colleges, will be joining us to walk us through that toolkit as well. But be on the lookout for some opportunities to use this toolkit in the short-term future. I need to meet with you offline, Jackie, to talk details, but super inspired and excited. I feel like putting this in my signature because it is that great. All right. Well, everyone have a great afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Jaleese.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.